What is economics? Economics is a social science that studies how societies allocate scarce resources to satisfy unlimited wants and needs. At its core, it's about making choices in the face of scarcity. It examines how individuals, businesses, governments, and nations make decisions about how to distribute resources and how these decisions affect the overall well-being of society. Key concepts in economics include scarcity, the fundamental problem that human wants and needs are infinite, but the resources available to satisfy them are finite. Choice, because of scarcity, choices must be made. Every choice involves a trade-off. Opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative that must be foregone when a choice is made. Efficiency, using resources in the most effective way to produce goods and services. What's the scope of economics? The scope of economics is vast and continually expanding. It broadly covers 1. Microeconomics, focuses on the behavior of individual economic agents such as consumers, firms, and industries. It examines topics like supply and demand in specific markets, pricing of goods and services, consumer behavior and utility maximization, firm production, costs, and profit maximization, market structures, perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, resource allocation within a single market. 2. Macroeconomics, deals with the economy as a whole. It analyzes aggregate economic phenomena, such as national income and output, GDP, inflation and deflation, unemployment, economic growth and business cycles, fiscal policy, government spending and taxation, monetary policy, control of money supply and interest rates, international trade and balance of payments. Beyond these two core branches, economics also encompasses specialized fields like econometrics, applies statistical and mathematical methods to test economic theories and analyze economic data. Development economics, studies the economic aspects of developing countries, focusing on issues like poverty, inequality, and sustainable growth. Environmental economics, analyzes the relationship between the economy and the environment, addressing issues like pollution, climate change, and resource depletion. Behavioral economics, integrates insights from psychology to understand how psychological factors influence economic decision-making. Financial economics, studies the allocation and deployment of economic resources through financial markets. Labor economics, focuses on the functioning of labor markets, including wages, employment, and labor unions. International economics, examines economic interactions between countries, including trade, finance, and exchange rates. Public economics, studies the role of government in the economy, including taxation, public expenditure, and social welfare programs. Why is economics called a social science? Economics is called a social science because 1. Studies human behavior. It fundamentally analyzes how individuals and groups make decisions. While it uses models and quantitative methods, these are applied to understand complex human interactions and motivations. 2. Deals with society. Its subject matter directly impacts and is impacted by societal structures, institutions, and norms. It seeks to understand and improve social well-being. 3. No pure laboratory control. Unlike natural sciences, economists cannot conduct controlled experiments on entire economies. They rely on observation, historical data, and statistical analysis to draw conclusions. 4. Influence of culture and institutions. Economic phenomena are deeply intertwined with cultural values, political systems, and social institutions, which are all within the realm of social studies. 5. Normative and positive aspects. Economics has both positive, descriptive, what is, and normative, prescriptive, what ought to be, aspects, often involving ethical and value judgments about what constitutes a good society. Origin of economics. The origins of economic thought can be traced back to ancient civilizations, where philosophers like Aristotle discussed concepts of wealth, property, and trade. However, Economics as a distinct discipline emerged much later. Early economic thought. Pre-classical economic thought includes mercantilism, 16th-18th centuries, which emphasized accumulating wealth through trade surpluses, and physiocracy, 18th century France, which argued that wealth originated solely from land and agriculture. Adam Smith and classical economics. The generally accepted father of modern economics is Adam Smith, with the publication of his seminal work, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, in 1776. This book laid the foundation for classical economics, emphasizing the invisible hand of the market mechanism, free markets and limited government intervention, the division of labor as a source of increased productivity, the concept of self-interest leading to societal benefit. Beyond Smith, other key classical economists include David Ricardo, comparative advantage, rent theory, Thomas Malthus, population theory, and John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism, economic freedom, marginal revolution, late 19th century. This period saw the development of marginal utility theory by economists like William Stanley Jevons, Karl Menger, and Leon Walras, shifting the focus to individual decision-making and the concept of marginal changes. This led to the rise of neoclassical economics. Keynesian Revolution, 20th century, the Great Depression, 1930s, challenged classical assumptions of self-correcting markets. John Maynard Keynes's The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, 1936, revolutionized macroeconomics, arguing for government intervention, fiscal and monetary policy, to manage aggregate demand and stabilize the economy. Modern economics. Post-Keynesian economics saw the rise of various schools of thought, e.g., monetarism, New Classical Economics, New Keynesian Economics, Behavioral Economics, employing increasingly sophisticated mathematical and statistical tools. How economics is more crucial in the current world scenario. Economics is arguably more crucial than ever in today's complex and interconnected world due to several factors. 1. Globalization and interdependence. Economic decisions in one part of the world can have ripple effects globally. Understanding international trade, finance, and global supply chains is essential for navigating this interdependence. 2. Climate change and environmental sustainability. Economic models are vital for analyzing the costs and benefits of environmental policies, designing carbon pricing mechanisms, and promoting sustainable development. 3. Technological disruption, AI, automation. Economics helps understand the impact of automation on labor markets, the future of work, income inequality, and the need for new economic policies. 4. Persistent inequality. Addressing income and wealth disparities, both within and across nations, requires a deep understanding of economic forces and the design of effective social policies. 5. Demographic shifts. Aging populations in developed countries and youth bulges in developing ones pose significant economic challenges and opportunities related to labor force participation, social security, and consumption patterns. 6. Fiscal and monetary policy challenges. Governments and central banks grapple with high public debt, inflation, and the limits of traditional monetary tools. Economic analysis is critical for formulating effective stabilization policies. 7. Resource scarcity. Managing finite resources like water, energy, and minerals, especially in the face of growing global demand, requires economic principles. 8. Digital economy and data. The rise of the digital economy, platform businesses, and big data presents new challenges for competition policy, regulation, and taxation. 9. Pandemic preparedness and recovery. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the critical role of economics in understanding economic shocks, designing relief packages, and planning for recovery. In essence, economics provides the analytical framework to understand these complex challenges, evaluate policy options, and make informed decisions that impact billions of lives. How economics students differ from other branches? What's core difference? Economics students often develop a distinct way of thinking compared to students from many other branches, especially those in humanities, pure sciences, or even some other social sciences. Core differences. 1. emphasis on scarcity and trade-offs. This is perhaps the most fundamental difference. Economics training instills a deep understanding that resources are always limited, and therefore every decision involves an opportunity cost. This mindset applies not just to money but to time, effort, and even emotional energy. Other fields might focus on optimization, but economics explicitly frames it within the context of inherent limitations. 2. Marginal thinking. Economists think at the margin. This means evaluating the additional benefits versus the additional costs of one more unit of activity, e.g., one more hour of study, one more unit of production. This is distinct from thinking in terms of total costs or benefits. Many other disciplines might focus on averages or aggregates without this granular, incremental analysis. 3. Rationality and incentives. While behavioral economics has nuanced this, core economics assumes individuals and firms are generally rational and respond to incentives. Economics students are trained to identify incentives within any system and predict how they will shape behavior. Other fields might emphasize norms, culture, or psychological biases more primarily than direct incentives. 4. Use of models and abstraction. Economics heavily relies on simplified models, graphs, equations, to represent complex real-world phenomena. This involves abstracting away from many details to focus on core relationships and predict outcomes. While other sciences use models, economics applies them to human behavior and societal systems in a unique way, often involving assumptions about rationality and equilibrium. 5. Quantitative and analytical rigor. Economics, especially at higher levels, is very quantitative. Students learn econometrics, statistics, and calculus to analyze data, test hypotheses, and build sophisticated models. While fields like physics or engineering are also quantitative, economics applies this rigor to social phenomena, bridging the gap between social sciences and mathematics/statistics. Other social sciences might be more qualitative or interpretive. 6. Empirical testing of theories. Economic theories are constantly subject to empirical testing using real-world data. Economics students are trained to collect, analyze, and interpret data to validate or refute theoretical predictions. This strong empirical focus, combined with theoretical modeling, sets it apart. What do you think about economics versus others' thinking? I believe the economics thinking approach is incredibly powerful and beneficial, but like any framework, it has its strengths and limitations when compared to other ways of thinking. Strengths of economic thinking. Clarity in decision making. By forcing an analysis of costs, benefits, and opportunity costs, economic thinking provides a structured way to evaluate choices, whether for individuals, businesses, or governments. Problem-solving focus. It's inherently geared towards identifying problems, inefficiencies, market failures, and proposing solutions based on incentives and resource allocation. Scalability. The principles of scarcity, incentives, and trade-offs apply at all levels, from personal finance to global policy. Predictive power. Economic models, while imperfect, offer valuable insights into how policies or events might impact markets and behavior. Quantitative justification. It provides a framework for using data and quantitative methods to support arguments and policy recommendations. Limitations and where other branches excel. Reductionism. Economic models often simplify human behavior and ignore non-rational factors, emotions, cultural norms, and ethical considerations that are central to fields like psychology, sociology, anthropology, and philosophy. Ignoring power dynamics. Traditional economics might sometimes underplay the role of power structures, historical injustices, and political influence, which are deeply explored in political science and history. Value judgments. While economics tries to be positive, policy recommendations inherently involve normative judgments. Ethical and philosophical frameworks are crucial for defining what constitutes a good outcome or a just society. Qualitative nuance. Many social phenomena are best understood through qualitative research, narrative, and in-depth contextual analysis, which are strengths of sociology, anthropology, and humanities. Technological feasibility versus economic viability. Engineering and natural sciences focus on what is technically possible. Economics then layers on the question of whether it's economically viable or desirable given resource constraints. Conclusion. Rather than a versus, I see economics thinking as a complementary and often foundational perspective. For example, an economist might design a carbon tax, but a sociologist would explain how different communities might react to it. An engineer might design a revolutionary new energy source, but an economist would analyze its market viability and broader societal impact. A political scientist might explain how a law is passed, while an economist analyzes its economic consequences. The most robust understanding of complex issues often emerges from interdisciplinary approaches that combine the rigorous analytical framework of economics with the rich contextual understanding of other social sciences, the ethical considerations of philosophy, and the technological insights of STEM fields. Economic thinking provides a powerful lens, but it gains even more strength when integrated with other perspectives.